we're just so excited to be here for the 10th anniversary of Cheer, and what a wonderful organisation it is, and for it to be tied together with the 20th anniversary of our edited book is very exciting for us. And we're just going to speak very, very briefly, because personally I'm here to hear from all of you and learn. The other thing I'm going to say right now is, I may sound very posh, but I'm not. So I was advised to say this by somebody yesterday who said, why do you keep talking about working class when you sound like you do? So that's just a tiny thing.
It's not tiny, because she had elocution lessons and so did I, but hers worked and
Well, we can, yes, we'll leave that there. Louis kindly asked us to just say a few words about why did we produce the book Class Matters 20 years ago. So I'm starting off and Pat's coming in during it and after with a catch-up, because Pat's been working in this area for a long, long time, more than me. I would say my own interest in re-theorising class as a part of a feminist politics of commitment to working class women actually began here at Sussex. As a mature student in my early 30s, in the late 70s, I returned from 4 years in the States, 4 years of feminism, feminist politics and campus activism, and I was given a place to study here at Sussex. And it was here at Sussex that I first thought of myself as working class, because it was a very sustained daily interaction with middle class culture here at Sussex. And I was developing tools of critical analysis and expressing them via feminist theories. So I felt lucky to be here, but very bewildered and unsure of the rules and the roles, and often caught out by them, and sometimes just plain outraged at, you know, how things were. And contributors to Class Matters, as hopefully you will know, have discussed and analysed similar conflicting experiences. And I also want to add that I've experienced kindness and a lot of support from tutors and colleagues and employers here at Sussex. I have quite a long history at Sussex. Being at university 20 years ago, in the 70s and 80s, was a privilege, and certainly not a widespread experience of working class women in my generation. So those of us who were here wanted to work for the inclusion of more working class women, and like many other working class feminist academics, and some of them contributors to Class Matters, I wanted to demystify the processes and practices of higher education for women and men taking part in higher education. Part of our political project around class was to widen access to meaningful education, and for women in our teaching also to encourage working class women to express themselves and explore their ideas and experiences. And I keep saying women, and I also sometimes mean men, but I was part of a women's studies programme most of my academic life, and it was largely women. Pat and I had been working together, speaking and writing and publishing papers on the recognition of working class women in academia since the mid-80s. Together with other working class feminists, we rejected popular assumptions of the time that working class women inside and outside academia were striving to rise out of and escape the working class beginnings that we had. And we and many others embraced our working class identities as a proud and positive choice. And in our experience, Pat and I found ourselves to be enabled by being working class, because it was enabling with understandings which crossed barriers 20 years ago of race, sexuality, location, for example, so that we could interact with women in meaningful discussions and work politically together, there was needing to be a lot of development of that, clearly carrying on to the present. But we did argue for the value of the different experiences of being working class across all the boundaries that there are to being able to be meaningful together with different people. And found that there were deeper connections that could be made in work and life experiences. And we also raised the difficulties of exploring issues of class within feminism at that time, 20 years ago. We found debates around class seemed to provoke reactions of guilt and defensiveness and even hostility from colleagues and so on, and friends, which surprised us. In 1997 we wrote that this does not make it easy to develop new ways of understanding the diversity of women's lives, and nor how we might act on social mechanisms which increasingly condemn large proportions of new generations to economic hardship, inadequate housing, ill health and under-resourced schools and colleagues, end of the quote. And today obviously we're adding hugely to this list, and it seems to me that Cheer is doing massive amounts of wonderful work to forward things. As can be seen from the book, the contributors explored new ideas and reworked topics from new perspectives, and these new perspectives derived from diverse positions. It means to have a working class background is different in each case, but it's not so different that we don't recognise each other and we don't lose our connectedness across the other areas that I was mentioning, at least on this issue. Obviously there's lots of ways in which we need to interact with each other. So our hope, to round up, was that women from other class positions would also begin to explore what class meant for them, and thus enable better understandings between women and men across class difference. And we hoped that the book would be an important step in enabling all feminists to challenge oppressive and damaging class structures and mechanisms and institutions. And I still have great hopes that this is going on with all of the things we heard from Louise. And I'm going to hand over to her.
Okay, I'll just give you one example of the kind of comment that wasn't helpful. Chris and I were going to a conference and we were late because we got stuck behind a sewage line. And when we got to the conference, we said to the organiser, you know, huge apologies, we got stuck behind a sewage line. And she looked at us and she said, "That feels." Anyway. Louise said how little has changed, and I suppose I want to talk about how much has changed as well. And I think that what I want to say is about the different ways in which the experiences of our contributors and us were located in an extremely different context. In my own case, I was extremely lucky to be given one of 6 Inner London Education Authority scholarships to go to university. And this was despite the fact that I'd already been given a grant to train as a teacher in a course that lasted 3 years. There were no such things as student loans. I had a grant, and I didn't pay any fees. Education was regarded as a public good, not a private good. I also had a travel grant and a small allowance for books, which predictably I spent on books, in case somebody might find out if I didn't. And anyway, as brought up a Catholic, I knew that God was watching me. So I was very obedient. Okay, now, so that material support made a difference for me, because I couldn't possibly have gone to university or to teach training college had those grants not existed. In my family, we weren't, in today's terms, grindingly poor, but the number of times my parents had to borrow from an aunt or my grandmother, was quite significant. But none of us were poor to the extent of somebody that I met recently, Ellie, who's a single mum with 3 children, and she's trying to finish her degree. She's unable to afford any heating in the winter other than is generated by herself, her 3 children and a dog, who all pile into her bed when they come in the evenings if it's cold. That was not our experience. The experience of being a student was also very different. Staff weren't under the neoliberal cosh of, if it moves, assess it. And call it accountability while we're at it. There was no REF, research assessment, no TEF, teaching assessment, which actually doesn't assess teaching, no internal assessment via departmental reviews, no external assessment via Ofsted or the Quality Assurance Agency. We didn't think we owned staff just because we paid fees, something that emerged in an ongoing project that Gaby, Brian and I are doing. And nor did staff have to be careful about giving us critical feedback on our work in case we gave them poor evaluations internally or in terms of the National Student Survey. None of that was there. So I'm not trying to say that ours was a golden age. It wasn't. If it had been, there wouldn't have been a book. But I think it's important to remember, as we discuss for the rest of the day, that things were very different. To ask whether it's better or worse is not somewhere that I think it's productive to go, because who does that benefit but the people who don't want to engage in it at all. But I do think for the rest of the day, it is important to remember that the social context and political context of then and now has changed out of all recognition. Thank you.